Hey, how you doing? NOTCAST 233. Today I am going to be talking about, as you can tell by the t-shirt, Depeche Mode's 11th studio album, released on the 14th of October 2005. That album is Playing the Angel. Oh, hang on. No, sorry. That's The Cure's Boys Don't Cry. This is Playing the Angel by Depeche Mode, their 11th studio album. And there are furious rumours going around at the moment. Depeche Mode will be announcing their first new album after the death of Fletch. And yeah, conflicted feelings for lots of people about that. Some people thinking, is it really Depeche Mode without Fletch? Other people going, Fletch was practically useless from a musical perspective, and nobody will notice the difference. I don't know, actually. I'm not sure, because even though I was, and have been, very openly kind of dismissive of Fletch's contribution in a sonic fashion to the band, I'm not sure whether that really is Depeche Mode. Actually, just Dave and Martin. Like when I see the pictures of Pink Floyd now, and it's Nick and David, and I kind of go, looks like something's missing. But then you kind of go, how many roads must a man walk down before he can call himself a man? How many lineup changes can a band have before it calls itself a band? And there's a NOTCAST for that early on around changing lineups. But we won't get into that today because we're here to talk about Depeche Mode and to talk about the album Playing the Angel, which is, I think, it's their last truly great album, actually. The album before it, Exciter, clearly isn't very exciting. The albums after it, which are Sounds of the Universe, Delta Machine, Spirit, are albums made of good songs but not necessarily good albums. Which means you don't have to watch the next 3 episodes where I bitch about Depeche Mode albums. I've given you the review already. But they are compilations of new studio material. This is the last Depeche Mode album I heard where I thought and felt that it was really bloody good. All the other ones, sparks of greatness, moments of genius. This one, really solid Depeche Mode album. Their last classic, I think it's fair to say. Although it is problematic in certain areas, as I will get to. So for this album, they recorded 16 tracks. 12 are on the album. There are 3 B-sides. There's 1 non-album single. And it sold about 2 million copies in the US upon release, which is about half of the sales of Ultra, which were 4 million, and about 40% of the sales of Songs of Faith and Devotion, which was 5 million. So what you can see is, and this happens to everybody, it's not just Depeche Mode, is nobody's buying records anymore. So bands start to tour more as an excuse, or more correctly, they release albums as an excuse to tour, as opposed to touring to promote the album, because nobody's buying the album. And even if you wanted to buy the album, it's probably easy to stream it on Spotify anyway. Why bother buying something? So, Playing the Angel is not a great selling LP. Although, obviously, if someone says, well, you can sell 2 million copies of an album now, even Ed Sheeran would go, that's amazing. I will do in stores in order to do 2 million, which is a staggering sales figure. But obviously, the world has changed dramatically in the past 17 years. I try to pretend it hasn't, but clearly it has. And the first thing from the album which anybody heard was the track Precious, which was released in, I think, September, possibly 2005. Although a version of it, of Precious, with an unfinished video with lots of CGI in, sneaked out onto the internet in July 2005, and I remember watching the video for it in the Depeche Mode bar in Tallinn, in Estonia, in very early August. And I must admit, those were the days when I was drinking, and I had drunk a lot, and I was like, I'm in the Depeche Mode bar in Estonia, watching an unreleased Depeche Mode video, and I was like, I am shit faced. How am I going to remember this? I didn't. Video's terrible, The Precious, but it is an absolutely classic Depeche Mode track. One could cynically look at the construction of the song, the structure of it, and how it works, and go, "Yep, you're trying to do Enjoy the Silence." That's not quite what this song is. It's one of the very few Depeche Mode songs that when I listen to Precious, I don't think, oh, that could be better. There's nothing about it I would change if I was recording the song myself. There's nothing, not an ounce of flab in the arrangements, not a production choice, not a structural choice, not a word choice. Everything about the song is perfect. It's very simply one of the very best Depeche Mode songs ever recorded, and the fact that your band can get 25 years in and still be doing stuff this good. Not every band gets to do it. Most bands start to run out of ideas. And George Harrison said artists aren't prepared later on in their career to put in the effort that they do in the early days, because in the early days they were driven by ego, and it was like, well, we need to make fantastic records so that we can sell fantastic records, so we will have commercial and creative sustainability and success. Whereas later on, sometimes people get a little bit complacent. When you get to the Prince's 34th album in 34 years, and you kind of go, right, so he hasn't even done much in the way of quality control. He's like, well, these are the next 12 songs I've written, so these are going to be the 12 songs on the album, and you get the impression that those songs haven't been poured over. For something like Precious, you do get the impression that the band have really worked on the song to make it the best version of the song and the most fully realised version of the song that they can. And also, it's a song that bears up to repeated play, because Depeche have played it live 403 times, which is at almost every single gig that they've played in the past 17 years since this song was released. It's a gorgeous little lyric as well. It really is a very kind of gentle plea from Martin to his children to not be too judgmental, as he and his wife went through a divorce. And it is an interesting and mature song, which, given that most Depeche Mode songs are around knees and sin, including at least one on Playing the Angel, this is a song that's very grown up and has aged very, very well. There were two UK 12 inches with two very slightly different designs, although you wouldn't necessarily know, would you? You look at those and go, well, really, one's one way and one's the other way, isn't it? Put that there, and so the designs aren't substantially different in any way. The back photos. Oh, look. There's the band. There's the band again. You can tell this has been touched by the hand of Anton Corbijn. The 12 inches is basically just a bunch of pretty rubbish remixes, as indeed is the picture disc 7-inch of Precious. This was released long after Precious fell out of the charts, by the way. So this was released about a year later, because the other 4 singles from this period all had picture disc 7 inches. So this was released as a mop-up release to kind of complete the set. There wasn't really a reason for it. It's got the album version on the A side and the Michael Mayer ambient mix on the B side. And the ambient mix, by the way, which is also on the DVD single, is an absolutely fantastic and rarely known Depeche Mode track. It's kind of like, if you think about the extra tracks that the band sometimes had on some of their albums, like those interstitial tracks. The ambient mix of Precious would most definitely have been, or should have been, in there. It got its first release on this, the DVD single of Precious, the most reviled and possibly useless of formats. The DVD single makes a cassette single look positively futuristic, and this has the video, the motor remix, and the ambient mix on there. There was also 2 standard CDs. These are the main formats, the ones which everyone was pushed towards. This has the Sasha's gargantuan vocal mix edit. It's not very good. It has the Misk full vocal mix. That's not very good either. And it has a phenomenal B-side called Free, which we'll get back to in a minute. And this is the standard 2-track CD single, which has the album version and Sasha's spooky mix. The CD in America got 6 tracks on it. It didn't get Free, but it got the unedited version of the spooky mix, a Balearic mix, a crunch mix, and the motor mix that's on the DVD single. And the 2 12 inches, as I said before, came back with a bunch of remixes. So this has the full-length spooky mix and the gargantuan mix full length, and this has the full vocal mix, Michael Mayer's Balearic mix, the motor mix, and the crunch mix. None of which I can remember, because mostly Depeche Mode remixes at that point were mostly crap. as anybody that's listened to some of the remix albums will be able to tell you. On this CD single, of course, came the second track, which we heard from the sessions, a track called Free. And Free, by the way, is wonderful. It's one of the best Depeche Mode B-sides of all time. And the fact it isn't on the album, and some songs are on the album, is pretty surprising. In a perfect world, Free probably wouldn't have fit on the album, but it would have been absolutely great as a second track on a greatest hits album. So you can imagine Only When I Lose Myself on singles 86 to 98. It's Called a Heart and Shake the Disease on singles 81 to 85. The Best of Depeche Mode, which was released in 2006, had a track called Martyr on it. It should have had Free on it as well. And then you'd have two new Depeche tracks on the greatest hits album. It's a really good song. Doesn't fit with the album, but a fantastic B-side, one of Depeche's very best B-sides that there is. And it's better than most of the LP, but it just doesn't fit really, I'm afraid to say. And then on the 14th of October, we got the Playing the Angel album. Oops, sorry, did it again. Yes, there it is. That's I won't repeat the joke 3 times, just twice, and I'm not convinced it's a joke because I'm not convinced it's funny me doing that. But this is a fantastic LP. However, word of warning for you: if you have the CD edition of the album, the CD is compressed, brick-walled, and squashed as fuck, man, to put it technically, which means it's very, very badly mastered. The best digital version of Playing the Angel, should you need to get one, is the 5.1 mix that's on the DVD version of the album. This is the DVD version of the album that has full dynamics and doesn't have the squash dynamic range. The loudness wars are a terrible, terrible thing, and the CD version of the album is very harsh on the ears, very shrill, very badly mastered, very little in the way of dynamic range. It really feels like you're reading a novel, but in newsprint, or you're looking at the greatest photographs ever taken, but they're actually your photocopies. That's what squashing the dynamic range does. It takes out all of the detail and presents high contrast, low quality music. And I despise hot mastering on CDs. If you're an audio snob, and I ain't, but I got a headache the first time I listened to this, and I thought, oh, it's not meant to be doing that. Absolutely not. Certainly, Playing the Angel is undoubtedly 10 gazillion times better than Exciter. It's got stronger songwriting. The songwriting is more focused. The lyrics are better. The production is more focused. The songs are faster, pacier, better produced, more interesting. They've got better textures. The sounds don't come from plugins and from machines, but they come from analog synths. The songwriting is more diverse as well. So there's a strong gospel influence on at least a couple of songs on Playing the Angel, specifically John the Revelator and Lillian, both of which sound like they could have been sung by Howling Blind Willie McTell on a 1930s shellac disc. It's just a better album all round than Exciter in every way, shape or form. So whilst I go through the tracks bit by bit, the first thing I will do is, if you are going to get a digital version of it, do go for the CD with the DVD, because this has the 5.1 version of the album on DVD. It has it has a documentary, it has the video to Precious, and it's got an exclusive acoustic performance of the track Clean. So the band recorded 4 songs acoustically, the equivalent to their version of MTV Unplugged, as the Mary Whitehouse Experience joke would have had it. The 4 songs are Waiting for the Night, Clean, Surrender, and Nothing's Impossible, all of which frankly should have been on the DVD of this. But you can all stream them for free on YouTube, and they're available as various download versions of the songs. But Playing the Angel is certainly, in terms of the sequencing, the mastering, the mixing, it's really bloody good apart from the mastering of it. The album itself is excellent, and it's got some brilliantly iconography in the photographs. Like that would be, I think, a pretty good LP cover. Certainly better than some of the LP covers that Depeche has, and yet that's just stuck on the inside of the booklet. Quite why that isn't on the back of the LP sleeve, I don't know. Instead, we've got a picture of 3 bored, very rich men standing around looking a wee bit moody. So you've got a different photograph on the CD to on the back of the LP. This is black and white, that's full colour. Not quite sure why. Martin's wearing his God Save the Queen t-shirt for the Sex Pistols, something which obviously has come to pass in the past few days, which I'll talk about at some other point, I'm sure. But no, let's go through the LP song by song, track by track. Tried to not make it. So the opening track on the album is the second single that was released from the record, and that is A Pain That I Am Used To. And if you were going to be writing, what, give me a sample Depeche Mode track and you fed it into AI. AC/DC is like big balls or great balls or whatever. Depeche Mode probably would be A Pain That I'm Used To, would be the song title that you would get to. It's got this wonderful sense of comfort and melody around it. It's got a great structure. The only thing I don't like about it actually is the opening feedback loop that's a distorted synth part, which I think it really rips you out of the moment of the LP. So I think sequencing of an LP is super important. I think that the structure of the opening song is super important. Ideally, an opening song on an LP would bring in the instruments one by one so that you're able to attune to the sound and texture of the LP. Playing the Angel does nothing of that. It opens it with the sonic equivalent of a punch in the face, and then it strokes you and says it's gonna be all right. So my version of it, I've edited out that opening kind of noise, which is it just makes you think, "Fuck, my speakers are broken," and I really hate it. But there you are. The 7-inch has a great arrangement. In fact, every version of the track has a wonderful arrangement. It's layered, and whilst each repetition is different. So obviously it's got verse, chorus, middle eight, verse, chorus, instrumental ending. Each one of them has a different set of textures. So when you listen to the verses, tracks like Love Thieves on Ultra have very little variation in the instrumentation that you have between verses. So you could listen to verse 2 and verse 3, and were not the lyrics different, you wouldn't know that the song was actually a different verse. Whereas either track, you can put me into the middle of a song and I will know it's the first verse or the second verse or the third verse by what's happening in the background. Because with the trick with the repetition of a song is that you should have it so that it's the same but different, and it gives that song a durability and a re-listenability factor. So it's not just the same all over again. You play things slightly differently, you have different textures in, you've got different sounds, you kind of bend and pitch the bass a little bit differently, the lyric goes in a slightly different direction. Maybe the melody moves a little bit for the third verse, so that you don't have repetition all the way through. And repetition is it's boring because you end up just repeating it. It's kind of like making sandwiches for the 1000th time as you go, I know how to do this, I'm not interested in this. Whereas if you make a different sandwich every time, it's the same but different, much like every lineup of the fall and every lineup of the wedding present is different, but it's the same at the same time. And Pain That I'm Used To is a real great example of that production trick of changing the content of each segment of the song so that they are familiar yet alien at the same time. So the focus that we've got on that is when we get to the verses are different, but also the choruses are different. There's a key shift, there's a tempo shift. The drums move into double speed when you get to the chorus, and it's a classic trick that you will have from the Pixies. In fact, I read a tweet today from a friend of mine, I think we're friends, who said that they were listening to something on Radio 6 and went, somebody sounds an awful lot like they're listening to the Pixies, and they're trying to rip them off and it's not so good. And then suddenly at the end they're going, and that's the Pixies' latest single from the Pixies' latest album, and you kind of go, okay, so hoist by your own rock and roll petard there. So The Pain That I Am Used To, the first track on the album, undoubtedly a Depeche Mode classic. Second single released from the LP. Here's the 12-inch or one of the 12 inches. This one featuring, of course, fearless leader Sir Fletch of Andy on the back. This features the Jack LeConte mix and the Jack LeConte dub. And the Jack LeConte mix, by the way, is the arrangement of the song that is used when the band have been playing it live for about the past 10 years. And it just lifts the song up a little bit. It plays it at a different speed. It flattens out some of the bits. It makes the song a little bit clubbier, a little bit dubbier, a little bit umphier, to use a very, very technical term. and we'll get to the single versions of the track next. A pain that I'm used to. Depeche Mode classic. I'd give that a 5 out of 5. Song 2 on the album is John the Revelator, which is again, if you were going to feed a Depeche Mode into the AI machine and go, give me a Depeche Mode song title, John the Revelator would probably be what it comes up with. John the Revelator was the 4th single released from the album. Again, at this point, all the singles were just backed with remixes, and I'll be blunt, pretty boring. But John the Revelator is a song that has been played live quite a few times. Dave Gahan played it on his 2021 solo tour, which lasted, I think, a whole total of 7 shows. So really pushing himself there. And it's a cover and a rewrite of a 30s blues song by a guy called, I think, Sunhorse Blues, which is lyrically around having a faith in a god of some form, no matter what life throws at you. Following on from some of the lyrical themes and pressures about having faith and trust in things and hoping that everything is going to turn out okay. It follows the template of modern electro blues, which Depeche have been mining quite deeply since songs of faith and devotion. Songs like I Feel You and Barrel of a Gun, It's No Good, Love Thieves, John the Revelator, Lillian, most of what's on Delta Machine. These are songs that kind of cross meld, almost like cover versions, modern day cover versions, on synths of classic 30s blues tracks you've never heard is pretty much where a lot of Depeche Mode's current songwriting is. So maybe it should be sung by Howling Blind Amputee John on a 78 RPM shellac 10-inch disc. You can barely make out, and a copy of it only exists at the Smithsonian Audio Archive or something. I don't know. Good track, not amazing, good. And seen it live many times now. The 3rd track on this album is Suffer Well. This album is top loaded with all killer, no filler. By the way, sequencing is really strong on this. And Suffer Well is the 3rd single to be released from the album. It was also the first single by Depeche Mode not to be written by Martin Gore since Just Can't Get Enough in 1981. It's been an awful long time since a non-Martin song was an A-side. And Suffer Well, when you listen to it, it's a Dave Gahan track. It's, I think, the first Dave Gahan song written and performed by Depeche Mode. It's the first Dave Gahan song which was released as a single, and it doesn't sound like it's not Martin Gore. It really sounds like a Depeche Mode song. You listen to it, and there is nothing about the way that song is constructed or built that would make you think that's not Martin Gore writing, that's another bloke. So it's a really successful experiment in that respect. It's co-written with the band's live drummer Christian Eigner and Andrew Philpott, who had worked with Martin on the Counterfeit 2 album and tour in 2003. And it also has the bizarre, I think accolade is the word, of being the first Depeche Mode song to be sung in 2 separate languages. So if you're particularly geeky, you will remember a computer game called The Sims. There was a trend for the language in The Sims called Simlish, which was kind of like English, but it didn't really mean anything. Kind of like Hopelandic is for Ziggy Ross. And Dave Gahan sang an alternate vocal in translated Simlish for Suffer Well. It's interesting. It's weird, and it kind of sounds like someone's reversed all the speech on it. The video's trash, of course, but the actual video for Suffer Well most definitely isn't, as you can tell by the video. By the video still here, which has Martin as the best man stroke groom. Fletch as the groom. I think Martin as the bride and Dave as the random dude in sunglasses, alongside this which says "We sell and suffer well," and you can't go wrong with a neon sign, as everybody knows. So Suffer Well, again, another Depeche Mode classic. Now, vinyl was practically dead in 2005, so this is a 2016 repressing of the album, and you kind of flip the album over. There you go to your side B, which is track 4 which is The Sinner in Me. And The Sinner in Me is a song which Depeche have played live 81 times, all in 2005, 2006. At this point in the band's career, every song off their new album, if they played it live, it was going to be on the tour that surrounded it. Very, very rarely did they bring back a song from a previous one of the more recent albums. I think they did in 2005, they played Goodnight Lovers, which they didn't play live on the Exciter tour, or was it called the Excite tour? I can't remember now. And then in 2017 they played Corrupt from Sounds of the Universe, which they didn't play live in 2009. But those are the only two times they brought back songs that they've not previously played on the accompanying tour. So if you want to hear Depeche play a song from their new album, you have to go and see the tour that goes with the new album. And The Sinner in Me is one of the examples. I think The Sinner in Me, track 4, is one of the finest songs on the LP. Primarily because it really reminds me of Alan Wilder's post-Depeche band, Recall. And Recall are very fluent in having interesting rhythm parts, interesting drum patterns, and dirty duetting bass lines. And The Sinner in Me has this kind of distorted analog bass line that just, you could listen to it for hours on end without getting bored of it. It's very groove based. It's very human. Apparently, Fletch played actual live bass on The Sinner in Me. But unlike a number of the earlier songs from Depeche's trio period of Ultra and Exciter, by the time you get to Sinner in Me, there's nothing tentative about it. There's no we're learning how to be Depeche Mode again. For Sinner in Me, it's very clearly this is us. This is what we do. It's confident. It's based on a dirty fucking groove. It's got a filthy bass line. It's got a good kind of rhythm and a propulsive beat and texture and sound to it. The Sinner in Me, fantastic. All the songs on the album so far, absolutely great. Of course, track 5 is Precious, which I've talked about before, so we won't go through that again. Track 6 is, it's Macro, which is no good. I do not like Macro at all. It's the first Depeche Mode duet in a very long time. Martin takes the lead vocals on Macro, Dave does the backing vocals, much like Waiting for the Night is largely a duet as well, but most of the time the two don't duet. They do it more now, but they didn't do it very often. And Macro is it's pretty obviously the song where Martin explores all of his standard lyrical conceits. So it's about the nature of reality, about nature, about sex, also about senses. So, the lyric is overflowing senses, heightened awareness. I hear my blood flow. I feel its caress. And our bodies moving with pure precision, one universal celebration, one evolution, one creation. There's an element of, basically it should be called Fucking His Ace, by Martin Gore, aged approximately 50. Which I'm sure it absolutely is. It's the filthiest of the songs on the album, and I mean filthy in the sense of something like Judas or In Your Room. It's a song about boning, and Martin Gore wants you to know that he gets up and nothing gets him down, and he's got a soft part. He's got a soft spot for you that's getting harder. So yes, Playing the Angel, Macro, not the best Depeche Mode song ever. Luckily, like a They Might Be Giants album, every Depeche Mode record, if you don't like the song, well, there's another one in about 4 minutes, so you don't have to. You're not stuck with it too long. And thanks to the miracles of CDs, you can just press skip. You don't have to listen to the whole thing or press fast forward through a tape. Luckily, those days are long gone. This is a gatefold of the 2016 version of Playing the Angel, by the way. Looks familiar? It's the back photo from Precious. And then we go over to LP2, side 2, if they still made cassettes. They don't. And track 7, I think, on the CD, which is I Want It All. And I Want It All is another of the Garner co-writes, alongside the next track, which is Nothing's Impossible. I find I Want It All is completely forgettable. It really, really is. It's not. It doesn't sound like a sincere Dave Garn song. Sorry, Dave, it doesn't. It sounds like someone is trying to sound like Depeche Mode. And it's like Dave Garn and Christian and Andrew kind of sat down and went, how do we do a song that sounds like Depeche Mode so that it gets on the Depeche Mode album? And that's what I wanted all sounds like. It sounds slightly insincere, um, because it's less than the sum of its parts. It's sounding like it's trying to sound too much like Depeche. Played live, I have no memory of seeing it played live, and I know I've seen it played live because I went to the shows where they played it. And much like um, Nothing's Impossible, it sounds like it's trying a little bit too hard to fit in with the Depeche Mode template. Suffer Well, of course, written by Dave and Andrew and Christian. Seamless. Sounded like it had always been a Depeche Mode song. I Want It All and Nothing's Impossible sounded more forced and more artificial. It sounded like they were trying a little bit too hard to sound like Depeche Mode, which is why I don't like those two tracks. I think Dave's got a lot better as a writer. Obviously, the more you write, the more you do, the better you become at something, the more fluent you become in the language in which you're speaking. Here, he's learning the language, and clearly Sufferwell is the most successful of the three songs written by Dave, and it's the one which has been played live more than any of the others. My mum said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything nice at all. So Introspector, which is track 9, I won't say anything about that. It's just yet another bloody bland instrumental that sits in the middle of an LP. And in the days when Alan was in the band, it wouldn't have a separate title. There's an element these days of going, well, people are buying CDs, and we need CDs to be longer than 10 songs. We need people to feel like they're getting value for money. If we put a 13th song on there, people feel they're getting about an hour's worth of music. That's worth putting down your £11.99 for. And so they've taken an instrumental, they've given it a title, and be blunt, doesn't deserve it. Absolutely doesn't. No chance. So there we go. Then track 10 is Damaged People. And that always reminds me of that line, which is, hurt people, which is a truism from psychologists and psychoanalysts. It's true, of course, because people that are hurt behave in ways that are not necessarily always thoughtful towards other human beings. So, damaged people do damage people, and sometimes they don't mean to. And I'm always reminded of something that I think it's Johnny Rogan said about Morrissey, which was he was truly dangerous in the way that only damaged people are, which was fascinating insight, actually, from my perspective. But that said, that was then, this is now. And Damaged People, I think, as a lyric is absolutely fascinating. It's the one of the two Martin vocals on the album, and it takes the approach of we're damaged people drawn together by subtleties that we're not aware of. We're disturbed souls playing out forever these games that we once thought we would be scared of. So that last line doesn't really work, but the idea of people that share trauma bond. I was in a relationship many years ago, and what I realised as I exited that relationship was that one of the things that we had in common was that we shared a common trauma around a terrible end of the most immediate preceding relationship, and that the thing that we shared wasn't actually, you go, oh, we've got so much in common. What we had in common was the fact that our life had been really crappy recently, and we'd been had a separation that was bloody awful. And we were like, that's a thing that we will bond over. That's a thing we've got in common. And you really don't necessarily, it's like two people that were enabling each other to bring out the worst of each other. And the concept of the song Damaged People is around that circle of or cycle of behaviour, and the idea that damaged people, and they don't necessarily know that they're doing the damage to other people. And then you create almost like a circle that perpetuates itself, like a snake eating its own tail. The idea with damaged people is actually you can break that circle, you can break that cycle of abuse and misuse and thoughtlessness, and you can create a new path. So, for example, my dad, who I don't have much contact with, if anything, is to be a person who taught me how not to be a parent through his behaviour. Some people would look at that behaviour and go, yeah, I can do worse. I looked at it and went, I've got to do better. The idea that because you have gone through something traumatic when you were younger, you then have to make sure other people experience that as well. That's nothing but cruelty. You know, if you can avoid inflicting that on other people, then please, for God's sake, do avoid it. So, of course, that's what happens. It's about breaking that cycle of abuse. And so, yeah, Damage People is an interesting song. Um, some really interesting ideas around it. I'm not sure that it perhaps expresses those ideas in a way that's fully successful in the concept of the album, but it gives it a damn good shot. And then we go into side 4 of the LP, or if you want to think about it from the CD, you know, tracks 11 and 12. And tracks 11 and 12 are Lillian and The Darkest Star. Lillian was the 4th single alongside John the Revelator, that double A side which I mentioned earlier on there, one of the few double A sides that Depeche committed to, alongside, of course, Blasphemous Rumours and Somebody. And Lillian it was never played live. One of the Depeche Mode singles that was never played live. There are a handful of them. Again, it follows the electro blues template that you would have from John the Revelator, from Suffer Well. The idea of a template of songs that you've never heard from blues artists covered in an electro blues stadium style. It's a strange single, Lillian. No video, no promotion, just some remixes. And you'd be easily forgiven for thinking it didn't exist. Certainly Depeche Mode have acted like it didn't exist. Even when it came out as a single, they weren't playing it. They were playing John the Revelator instead. And then the last track on the album is The Darkest Star. It's the nearest thing, The Darkest Star is the nearest thing that Depeche Mode have come to a title track for an album since probably Black Celebration, I would have thought. There's nothing on the LP which sounds quite like it. And I think with Darkest Star, what they're trying to do is they're trying to go for an epic sense of grandiose, all-encompassing musical atmosphere. But fundamentally, it fails. It reaches for the stars and it doesn't touch them. So The Darkest Star is not my favourite song on the album. I don't think it's been played live. If it has, I don't think I've seen the band play it live. But that's a completely different kind of position to be in. Now, it sounds like I'm being harsh about Playing the Angel. I shouldn't be. It's really bloody good. It's got at least 4 or 5 classics on it. So Pain That I'm Used To, John the Revelator, Suffer Well, The Sinner in Me, Precious, Lillian's pretty good, and The Darkest Star. They're all really good top tier Depeche tracks, and I would put them in my top 20 post-Alan Depeche Mode songs without a moment's hesitation or thought. Playing the Angel is a really bloody good record. It just has bad mastering on the CD. It sounds like you're listening to a slightly detuned radio because it's so fuzzy and distorted. There were 5 singles that released around this period. Obviously, you've seen Precious. I think I've shown you A Pain That I'm Used To. There's the 12 inch with the Jack LeConte remixes. The Pain That I Used To also got the 7-inch picture disc. This was the first of the picture discs to be released, actually, although not the first in sequence. And this is backed with a track called Newborn, which is a fantastic B-side. Depeche were doing amazing B-sides at this period. And you also got 3 silver disc releases. So you've got a 2-track CD featuring Newborn. Newborn, by the way, is a brilliant Depeche song if you haven't heard it. Dave really pushes his vocal limits. So sometimes you listen to some of the Dave songs and you kind of think they occupy a very thin area of tune. Newborn soars. It goes into registers he doesn't normally touch when he's singing, the kind of areas that you've heard on things like Heroes as well. So Newborn is one of the very best Depeche Mode B-sides. It's also got a remix of Newborn, the Foster mix, which is on the DVD single, that dreaded format, alongside the video and a making of the video. And then there's a CD single that has lots and lots and lots of remixes, including a remix by Telex, a pretty interesting one by Goldfrapp, and the 2 Jack LeConte remixes, which are now the template for the band when they perform it live. The 3rd single from the LP is Suffer Well, the first Dave Gahan song as a single. As mentioned before, Suffer Well is a great Depeche track. I'd love them to play it live more often than they do. They don't play it enough. It's got a fantastic remix by M83, by the way, which is on one of the CD singles, and it's on this one here. And M83, I think, also did the soundtrack for a Tom Cruise film called Oblivion, I think, which, by the way, I need to see. I haven't seen it for a while. Sufferwell is backed with a new track called Better Days, which is one of the very shortest Depeche Mode tracks. Actually, the shortest vocal Depeche track I think I've ever heard, which is, I think, 2 minutes 37 seconds or thereabouts, although I appear to be showing you the CD single. So yes, let's move that on to We Sell Hell and We Suffer Well. 2 minutes 28 seconds for Better Days there on the CD single, alongside this cheery shot on the inside. Never look so happy to be married, indeed. Still happier than some of my wedding days. And of course, the inside of the DVD single shows Fletch and Martin as man and wife, which is a very interesting way of looking at it. What's Dave's role? Is he the master of ceremonies? I don't know. So this is the DVD single. Again, a reprehensible format that should never have existed. And this has the video for Suffer Well, and it has an alter ego mix, and the Basteroid Dances Gone vocal version of Better Days, which I must admit isn't very good. Now, we did get a vinyl only single here. This is the third remix 12-inch for Suffer Well, but oddly enough, it doesn't feature Suffer Well at all. It doesn't, in fact, feature any track that's on any of the other releases. This is the Darkest Star 12-inch single, which was only released on vinyl and a promotional CD. The Darkest Star is, as I said before, the title track from Playing the Angel. The remixes on here did appear eventually in a digital form on the remix sets, but that is an unusual 12-inch, much like when Halo became a 12-inch. It's a single for which there is no A-side. It's all remixes. Naturally, this probably got to the charts in about number 77. So yes, The Darkest Star was kind of the fourth single from the album, but it was only a remix 12-inch, and hardly anybody noticed that it existed. And then the final format that we got for Suffer Well is the picture disc, which is here, which has the Mono Lake remix of Darkest Star on the B side, alongside the Mia Tote vocal mix. And the Darkest Star remixes on here are, I think, the Mono Lake mix, I think, is one of them, and yeah, the Holden remix and the Holden dub are on the 12-inch. So clearly they were trying to get some. Fourth single from the album, as mentioned before, double A side, John the Revelator and Lillian, and a chock full of remixes for you for this. So we had exclusive versions of John the Revelator and Lillian, which are just 7-inch edits, which you can barely tell the difference. Then there's some remixes on here of John the Revelator, which are on this. So clearly they were pushing John the Revelator as the actual single there, because that's the only one that was on the remixes. If you wanted to get the remix of Lillian, you had to go for the dreaded DVD single. Oh my god, what a terrible thing the DVD single is, featuring the bare version of Nothing's Impossible and a Chab vocal mix of Lillian, whatever that is. And of course we also got the picture disc 7-inch of Lillian here, the Uncle Dub, and the Robag blah 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 remix, which is terrible. I tried to listen to it on vinyl. I couldn't make to the end of it. It was bad. The band then went on tour, and they toured the world, as they always did, and they started doing, for the first time, a series of live CDs. There are 3 of the 30 or 40 live albums that are released from the tour. They recorded every show of the last leg of the tour in Europe and America. These are 3 of the CDs. This is Mexico City. This one is, I think that's Hyde Park, I think. Yes, it is Hyde Park. I went to that. They played Photographic, which they added to their set list for the first time in about 20 years. And then this is Leipzig in Germany. If you look carefully on Amazon, they turn up every once in a while for less than a tenner. It's just another Depeche Mode live album, really. Well worth getting, but not worth losing any sleep over. And then they also did a live DVD from that, which was Depeche Mode live in Milan. And this was 2 DVDs and an audio CD. Clearly, for the tour, the band had invested a little bit more money in the staging and the setup. It was the first time that they toured where they didn't have female backing singers, which was a great relief. And the set lists were more geared toward crowd pleasing, so they brought back songs like "Policy of Truth" and "World in My Eyes" that they hadn't played on the recent tour, and they gave out leaflets advertising the Live Here Now concert recordings, and they included those in the DVDs as well. They really pushed the merchandising angle on this particular tour significantly. In fact, here's one of the merchandise booklets that every ticket holder had, with a list of all their t-shirts, including some reprints of some old and classic t-shirt designs that had last been seen in the 80s. Live in Milan is a very interesting live document. It captures the euphoria of Depeche Mode live, and it does so in a way that has not aged particularly well, but is pretty interesting. Around about this time also, the band did the 5.1 mixes of all of the albums. It's time with the 5.1 mix that they'd done of Playing the Angel, and they also announced a hits album and a new single. The single was called Martyr, and Martyr was recorded during the Playing the Angel sessions, but not included on the album. It's a really great track, and it was backed with a ton of crappy remixes, I'm afraid to say, which I'm going to race through very quickly. There's a 12-inch of Martyr, not amazing. There's a remix promo of Just Can't Get Enough and Personal Jesus, so Dirty South remix of Just Can't Get Enough, and the T-Bone Mass remix of Personal Jesus. Here's the 12-inch of Martyr, which is just called Depeche Mode Remixes, which doesn't actually feature a remix of Martyr at all, but remixes of older tracks which were clearly designed to potentially go on the Hits LP. The Martyr got its standard 3-disc release. It got a CD and a DVD. That was awful, of course. You got a remix, its promo LP, which features all the various old tracks that had been remixed, and then we got the best of with a DVD included, and that was wrapping up 2005 and 2006. In conclusion, Playing the Angel, oops, I said I wouldn't do it, but I did it, is a really brilliant Depeche Mode LP.